All right, here is what is happening in Britain and America right now, and I need you to pay attention because the Iran war is reshaping politics on both sides of the Atlantic in ways nobody predicted. Keir Starmer just told Donald Trump flatly that Britain will not join an illegal war. Reform UK wants to regulate your sex life. Britain's military cannot fight for more than a few days. And in the United States, Operation Epic Fury has destroyed over 2,000 targets in Iran. A terror attack hit Texas, and the Supreme Court just made a surprising decision on guns. Plus, Trump is promising a 90s-style economic boom while doing the exact opposite of everything that made the 90s work. There is a lot to get through, so stick around. If this is the kind of reporting that cuts through the noise for you, hit that like button. Subscribe if you have not already. And if you are in a position to support independent journalism, consider sponsoring the channel or using the Super Thanks feature. We research and fact-check every single story. Now let us get into it. Let us start with the biggest story in British politics this week, because Keir Starmer just did something remarkable. He stood in Parliament and effectively told the President of the United States Britain will not participate in what Starmer called an illegal war. He refused to allow British bases for offensive strikes against Iran, refused to share intelligence on Venezuela, refused to provide Diego Garcia for attacks. And remember, Starmer is a former human rights lawyer. He cited the Iraq debacle as a precedent and said, "We do not believe in regime change from the air." He also stated directly that Trump has no plan for what comes next, which is especially significant because Starmer receives intelligence briefings from services that communicate with their American counterparts. He knows things we do not, but here is where it gets complicated. When Iran started hitting civilian targets in neighboring countries, a hotel in the UAE, a port in Bahrain, a refinery in Saudi Arabia, Starmer authorized defensive operations from British bases because the Gulf states themselves requested protection. Legally, this is defensible. Practically, it puts Britain in an impossible position. Trump told The Telegraph he was very disappointed in Keir and that it took too long. The US Defense Secretary mocked Britain's prim pearl clutching. Opposition leader Kemi Badenoch did not even try to justify the legality. She simply said, if international law gets in the way of doing what you want, you should ignore it. From the person whose job is literally to write laws. This moment is historically significant. Britain has not defied a sitting American president on military action this publicly since the Suez Crisis in 1956, and that is exactly the point. The special relationship, that vague but powerful transatlantic bond that has defined Western security for 80 years, is being tested in ways that make even the Iraq war disagreements look mild. Because at least with Iraq, the argument was about intelligence quality. This time, the British Prime Minister is saying the entire premise is illegal. That is a fundamentally different kind of disagreement. Now, here is one I genuinely did not see coming. Danny Kruger, a Reform UK MP who defected from the Conservatives, announced that Britain suffers from a totally unregulated sexual economy and that Reform UK should play a role in resetting sexual culture. He proposes moving from individual to family-based taxation to financially incentivize having children. This is the party whose entire identity is built on opposing regulation. Yet here is one of their MPs wanting to regulate bedrooms. The irony gets worse. Reform UK literally refused last week to support removing the two-child benefit cap, saying the country cannot afford it. But tax breaks for middle-class families to produce volleyball teams? That is apparently a different budget. Analysts point out that family-based taxation would hurt single pensioners, who are Reform's core voters, make it financially harder for women to leave bad relationships, and cost more than simply scrapping the two-child cap. Now let me tell you something that should worry every British citizen. According to the newspaper, Britain's defense capability is at a critically low level. Ammunition and weapons stockpiles would be exhausted within days in a major conflict. The Navy, Army, and Air Force have shrunk dramatically compared to the 1990s. Promises to raise military spending to 3.5% of GDP by 2035 are behind schedule. Recruiters in military uniforms are already approaching people on the street to enlist, and media outlets are reminding the public that if conscription were introduced, men aged 18 to 41 would be subject to mandatory service. The age for reservists has been raised to 65. This is not theoretical anymore. To put this in perspective, during the Cold War, Britain maintained enough conventional forces to hold a defensive line for weeks. Today, military analysts estimate that in a full-scale engagement, certain ammunition types would be exhausted in under 72 hours. The army has fewer than 78,000 active personnel, its smallest size since the Napoleonic Wars, and the equipment that does exist is aging rapidly, with the average age of the Royal Navy's surface fleet now exceeding 15 years. If you are still with me, drop a comment below. What do you think? Is Starmer handling the Iran situation correctly? And subscribe if you want to stay ahead of these stories. And here is where the Iran war hits where it hurts most, your wallet. Chancellor Rachel Reeves delivered her updated economic forecast, but every number in it is already obsolete because of the war. The Strait of Hormuz, through which 20% of the world's oil passes, is effectively closed. Major shipping companies have suspended operations. Insurers have cancelled war risk coverage. Brent crude jumped 13%. European gas prices surged 50% in a single day. Britain imports over 40% of its energy. Industrial electricity tariffs are already the highest in the G7, 4 times higher than the United States. Nearly 90% of British companies have already reported rising energy costs. The chain reaction is predictable. Inflation spike, consumer spending collapse, then recession and job losses. The spring energy price cap was supposed to bring relief. Instead, bills may go up. Interest rate cuts are now off the table. One energy analyst put it bluntly, a prolonged closure of the Strait of Hormuz guarantees a global recession. Now, let us cross the Atlantic. The United States launched what the Pentagon calls the most lethal, complex, and precise air operation in history. Operation Epic Fury has destroyed over 2,000 targets across Iran, including military bases, missile positions, command centers, and air defense infrastructure. The key result, the elimination of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei. An Israeli missile hit his residence in Tehran during a meeting of senior leadership, based on months of CIA tracking. 4 American service members were killed. Kuwait's air defense accidentally shot down 3 U.S. F-15 Strike Eagles, though all 6 crew members ejected safely. The interim successor is Ayatollah Alireza Arafi. President Trump approved the operation with a simple message: Operation Epic Fury is a go. No cancellations. Good luck. The scale of this operation is worth putting in context. The last time the United States conducted anything remotely comparable was the opening of the Iraq War in 2003. But that campaign was preceded by months of public debate, UN resolutions, and coalition building. Epic Fury went from intelligence confirmation to execution in under 48 hours. The geopolitical fallout is already cascading. China has lost its largest oil supplier overnight. European energy markets are in chaos. And there is no credible successor government in Tehran, which means the power vacuum could make post-Saddam Iraq look orderly by comparison. Domestically, the war is already generating consequences. The FBI raised the domestic terror threat level after a shooting in Austin, Texas, early Sunday morning. A 53-year-old man named Diago Diagni opened fire at a bar called Buford's, killing 3 and wounding 14. He was wearing a T-shirt with the Iranian flag and the words, "Property of Allah." Diagni entered the U.S. from Senegal on a tourist visa in 2000, became a citizen in 2013, and legally purchased his weapon in San Antonio. The FBI is investigating it as a potential act of domestic terrorism. Radical Shia preachers in America are reportedly interpreting the Middle East conflict as a prophetic end-times battle, which experts say could fuel extremist sentiment. The Supreme Court made a decision that surprised both sides of the gun debate. It declined to hear a case challenging the federal ban on gun ownership for people with serious criminal convictions, including nonviolent offenses. The case involved a Utah woman convicted of bank fraud in 2008. Even this heavily conservative court decided that a convicted fraudster with a firearm was a step too far. The Trump administration actually supported the refusal, noting that the Attorney General can restore gun rights on a case-by-case basis. And finally, the story of Maduro. The former Venezuelan president, now held in the United States, may lose his lawyer. The Treasury Department issued a license allowing his attorney to receive payment from the Venezuelan government, then revoked it 3 hours later without explanation. The lawyer calls it a violation of the Sixth Amendment and says it amounts to kidnapping. If the court does not intervene, the attorney plans to withdraw. For a man who spent 20 years destroying a country with the world's largest oil reserves to end up unable to afford a lawyer, well, there is a certain poetic justice in that. Every like tells the algorithm this matters. Every comment helps more people find independent, fact-checked journalism in a sea of recycled headlines. If you value what we do here, the research, the verification, the hours spent making sure every number is accurate, consider sponsoring the channel or leaving a super thanks. This is not a corporate operation. It is one team doing the work because somebody has to. Your support keeps it going. Leave your thoughts below, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and thank you genuinely for being part of this community. I will see you in the next one.